Good evening and welcome to the June 14th meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. We're glad you're here. Thank you for coming. Tonight we are a little short on the dais, as you can see. Commissioner Jose had a planned absence due to a previous commitment. However, Mayor Barnett is joining us via phone, and so he will be here in spirit with us this evening. And with that, as our custom, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a motion to allow for electronic participation for the June 14th, 2022 Village Council meeting?
Commissioner Wallace, I move to allow electronic participation for the June 14th, 2022 Village Council meeting.
Second.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, welcome, Mayor Barnett. Mayor Barnett may not be incredibly responsive this evening because he is short of a voice, just so everyone knows. Rosa, will you please call roll?
Mayor Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Jose? Commissioner Wallace?
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Here.
Commissioner Colavani?
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Here.
Commissioner Glover?
Here.
And we have a quorum. So we are moving right along to item 3, which are minutes of council meetings. Is there a motion concerning previous council meeting minutes?
Commissioner Wallace, I move to approve the Village Council meeting minutes from June 7th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda, which is item 4?
Commissioner Wallace, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are moving right along in our agenda. The public comments portion of these meetings on agenda items later and coming up again on non-agenda item topics are opportunities to address your village council. Please remember that this is not a debate, nor is it an open question and answer session. It is simply an opportunity to speak to the council. We have a variety of additional opportunities to engage council members, including our remark system, the CRC system, coffee with the council, direct email, or by phone. Every one of your council members takes time on and off this dais making themselves available. But the public comments agenda item and the public comments portion of each specific agenda item are intentional parts of this structured meeting. As such, we have some expectations on how they will be handled. Please state your name for the record, keep comments to 5 minutes or less, avoid repeating what others have already said, and please keep your comments to 1 visit to the podium per subject. If you forget to mention something or an additional conversation brings up a new idea, please hold that until after the meeting and use one of the other contact methods, either email, CRC, phone, to contact us as needed or bring that new comment to our next meeting. And we are moving right along to our active agenda. Our active agenda is items that we have already discussed and are voting on this evening. Is there a motion concerning proposing the establishment of a special service area number 12 in the village of Downers Grove?
Commissioner Wallace, I move to adopt an ordinance proposing the establishment of Special Service Area Number 12 in the village of Downers Grove, Illinois, and providing for a public hearing and other procedures in connection therewith, as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from the audience this evening on item A? Questions or comments from the council? All right, seeing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Colavani?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye.
All right, we are moving to item B. Do I have a motion concerning proposing an establishment of Special Service Area number 13 in the village of Downers Grove?
Commissioner Wallace, I move to adopt an ordinance proposing the establishment of Special Service Area Number 13 in the Village of Downers Grove, Illinois, and providing for a public hearing and other procedures in connection therewith, as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the audience on item B? Questions or comments from Village Council? All right, seeing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Commissioner Culvany,
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye.
We are moving right along to item C. Is there a motion to direct staff to negotiate the renewal of the solid waste contract with Republic Services?
Commissioner Wallace, I move that the Village Council direct staff to negotiate a renewal of the solid waste contract with Republic Services. Second.
Questions or comments from the audience? Good evening.
David Rose. Perhaps nothing council's done in recent years is more emblematic of the inadequacy of its actions on environmental sustainability than the pathetic discussion that took place last week on the subject of waste disposal contract. That discussion demonstrated both a lack of knowledge and a lack of interest, dare one say a lazy attitude about it all by council. Most notably, it seemed to show a lack of council's interest in pursuing a village-wide commitment to reducing waste. Thus, I would contend the goals as enumerated lack much in the way of substance. The council chair talked about concern for residents being squeezed on cost. Guess what happens when you refuse to consider environmental sustainability and the excrement of your way of living starts hitting the fan, or in this case, the landfill? Council's discussion was, for me, another example of its lack of leadership on that and other subjects. Inferring from the discussion, the agreement, I gather, doesn't cover waste generated by the commercial properties of the village. Am I to then presume that it's not helpful for the village to be informed, for village residents to be informed of how that source of waste is handled? Does the contract with commercial enterprises include recycling? If not, why not? On the subject of sustainability versus cleanup day / amnesty day, the representative of Republic suggested having such a day does not encourage waste reduction. I would go further and say the price of card options is the foundational adequacy of the whole program. The tonnage, according to what was described in the report, is that Downers Grove households emit on average 1 ton per household. The sticker program saw a reduction in numbers sold in 2021. The claim was that it was due to counterfeiting, but again, without any actual supporting evidence. So I infer that neither the company nor the council apparently made any effort to investigate the extent of cheating or its impact. But the discussion did suggest that the idea was going to be used as one reason to get rid of stickers. Sticker price rise was implied, again, by the representative of Republic as a deterrent to its desirability, but again, without any elaboration of the underlying logic. The contract presents an opportunity to stimulate discussion of the issue of waste reduction throughout the village, or an opportunity for the Environmental Concerns Commission to stimulate such a discussion. Instead of that, we see nothing as far as I can tell. Parenthetically, I would note that I was struck that the mention of an individual being appointed to the Environmental Concerns Commission happened last week, when I thought the Environmental Concerns Commission was dormant, which suggests to me no reason for appointing anybody to a dormant body. But I go on. I'm not clear as to why you're not seeking proposals. How else do you learn of alternatives? Who's responsible for finding out such possibilities? Is any effort being given to investigating what communities around the country or around the world are actually doing to reduce waste? Who audits the practices of the service provider regarding its disposal, labor, and other practices? Council Chair in waiting suggested that the goal of the cost, a user's cost of the system was important, but as far as I could understand, it was undefined, and thus I wasn't quite sure what it was supposed to mean. What system are we talking about? The pickup system or the environmental system? It strikes me that what's going on is, as happened with the case of stormwater, what all you're trying to do is figure out a way to pay for it and not generate much in the way of political opposition. Coming back to the sticker part of it, I raised the question of how is the council intending to handle this issue or the position of the low solid waste emitter. Their cost to the system right now would seem to be minimal, and that the sticker program is serving them well compared to using a bin. If they're forced to move away from a sticker to using a bin, it strikes me that they would wind up paying for something that they're not actually using. So I'm disappointed that you're going directly to a vote with no actual public discussion before this evening's meeting, because there was no public discussion last week at the meeting because there was no one from the public actually attending that discussion. By going directly to voting this evening without public discussion, it feels to me like, as I stated earlier, reducing waste is not really the objective of the program. Instead, what we get are attention to things like the aesthetics of the disposal mechanism used in the program, which strikes me as not unlike the notion that the well-to-do, when they emit feces, believe that theirs doesn't stink. If we wanted to actually cut down on waste, I would suggest that we don't take the stuff out of Downers Grove so that it's no longer out of sight and out of mind. And I would ask, what public education and publicity are you actually intending to provide to residents? I tried to use the website and found several problems, suggesting that it hasn't been used much lately.
David, you're at
I'll close
5.
by saying
Thank you.
this. What you've not talked about, which really contributes to the issue of waste reduction, are the key elements here, which is that there's no effort to reduce consumption in general. There's no effort to shrink the size of housing in Downers Grove, which contributes to waste. And there's no effort at all to talk about the number of people living in Downers Grove, which, if you're going to increase, is also by definition increasing waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions from the council or comments from the council? Yes. Commissioner Gilmartin.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're clear here that this motion is an opportunity for staff to work with our current provider, Republic Services, to take a look at the contract as it expires next year in ways that we can be better environmentally. That's an important piece, I think, to everyone here on the council. This is by no means the end of it. We are very interested to hear what Republic has to offer now, as it's been some time since we last were negotiating or discussing their services, nor does it limit us from looking outside of Republic to provide services if we don't, as a council or as a village, find those services to be adequate. So I just think I want to make sure we're clear at what we're voting on here tonight. This is simply an opportunity to allow our staff to work with Republic, who has, from my small research around town, a good reputation in what they provide in ways that they can be better for our village. So I just want to make sure that that was clear. Thank you.
Commissioner. I echo those sentiments.
Yeah.
Commissioner Glover?
I also echo Commissioner Gilmartin's comments, given the fact that we still have an opportunity to go back out and get bids, and given the fact that they've met and exceeded most residents' expectations, I think they're due the opportunity to retain the contract, given the fact that we can still go out and get bids if we need to. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Commissioner Sadowski-Fugate.
Yes, while I do appreciate the fact that it does appear that residents are happy with the level of service, my concerns are a little bit more toward the environmental sustainability side of it, and I was hoping that we could just go straight to RFP so that we could hear a little bit more about any innovations that, might have happened in the last 10 years, which we know that I'm sure there have been many as technology moves quickly. So for that reason, that's why I'm voting no today. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Yes, I'll also be voting no, only because I don't have a huge issue with Republic Services, but I thought it'd be a great idea after 30 years of dealing with one vendor or predecessor. We didn't have an opportunity to go out to bid to see what else is out there. This is our second public meeting. Anyone in the village could have come last week and presented and discussed. Anyone could have come tonight. And if the negotiations are successful, there'll be another public meeting where we have to approve the contract. And if we go out to RFP instead, if we're not satisfied with the results of that and what they come up with, there will even be more public meetings on that. So plenty of opportunities for people to give us input on this.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Any other final public comments? Mayor Barnett, would you like to comment, or are you able? I know I told you I wouldn't do this.
I'll try just briefly. First of all, I'll certainly second what most of my colleagues said. I will be voting for this. The good thing about us videotaping meetings is they can be watched by anybody, anytime. As Rich said, this is our second. Should there be a contract staff feels good about, there will be two more, first reading and another vote. At any of those two meetings, if we didn't feel good about it, we would go to an RFP package. So, you know, it's certainly not any kind of a done deal. What others might notice if they were to watch the last meeting where we talked about this is 7 council members, I think, as I recall it, having significant interest in asking for significant input through the contract and through the negotiating process on environmental improvements to both our system, and in particular, I'm pretty sure I heard at least 5, maybe 6 of us use the words reducing overall waste. This council is clearly focused on many of the things that our residents and those focused on the environment feel are important, because we're in agreement, and I'm in support of this next step in the process. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other final comments? All right, Rosa, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Commissioner Kolovany,
Nay?
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Nay.
Commissioner Wallace,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye.
And that passes 4-2. Thank you very much. We are moving right along to our first reading portion of the agenda. This is the portion of the meeting where we hear things for the first time and workshop and discuss some items that are coming before us. So I'm going to hand this over to our village manager, Dave Fieldman.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. There are 3 items on tonight's first reading agenda. The first is a resolution considering acceptance of the comprehensive annual financial report and audit for the calendar and fiscal year 2021. Here to present this information is our auditor, Scott Termine, a partner from Forbes.
Thank you. Good evening, Scott.
Good evening, everyone. I first want to thank you all for engaging us to conduct the audit again this year. And I have to give special thanks to Robin and Diva for all their assistance this year. They've had plenty of work on their hands with the ERP conversion process, and juggling an audit in the midst of that is certainly another challenge for them, and we appreciate all the effort that went into that. With their preparation, we did not encounter any difficulties or disagreements while conducting the audit that we would need to make you aware of, so happy to be able to tell you that. We also did not have any adjusting journal entries as part of our audit that we needed to propose. So I'll just provide some brief comments, and anyone can interject with questions if you'd like at any point, but I'll also stop and make sure we check at the end. As we typically do, we've provided 5 main deliverables as part of the audit. So you first have the annual comprehensive financial report. There are 2 TIF reports that we issue for the downtown and Ogden TIF districts. We then have the single audit report, followed lastly by a required communication to you all under auditing standards that summarizes the results of our audit. So each of the audits, the opinions that we've provided are what we refer to as clean opinions. So that's the best form of opinion that you can get. It's exactly what you would want under the circumstances. We're not reporting any instances of material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls. So that's also good news. And then just to keep things brief as requested, I'll make a couple comments on the financial statements. First, the report includes a management's discussion and analysis section, which I'd encourage you to read if you haven't already seen it. It provides a lot of nice narrative overview on the financial statements. There's obviously a lot to digest in those statements, but that's a nice concise summary of what happened throughout the year. I'd also highlight the fact that within the financial statements, when you look at the fund financial statements, one thing that I think is important to note is the position of the general fund. And as municipalities continue to navigate the ongoing effects of COVID, combined with just the recent inflationary pressures, looking at that fund balance is a good indicator of the health of the village. So at 12/31/21, the unassigned amount in the general fund is about $21.4 million, which is roughly 42% of the actual 2021 expenditures. So that puts the village at just over 5 months worth of reserves, essentially. And just for context on that, I'll let you know that there is a best practice recommendation from the Government Finance Officers Association that suggests that you keep that to no less than 2 months. So you're certainly managing within a good range there. So positive news there. And then again, I just note for 2021, with the ongoing COVID relief funding, you did trigger what we refer to as a single audit requirement, which is where we look at your federal grant program expenditures. And there again, you did have clean opinion, so we have nothing to report in terms of any findings or significant issues. And then lastly, I'll just say that over the past several years, GASB has been very active with issuing new accounting pronouncements that affect governments. The village has stayed up to date on those. Fortunately for 2021, there was a nice reprieve. You did not have any new standards that had to be adopted. But as we move now into 2022, there is another new one that's coming, and that's going to impact the way that you account for your leases. So I just wanted to make you all aware that that is coming down the pike, and it will just add one more thing to Robin and Diva's plate then for this year. So just wanted to make you aware of that, and with that, I'll just gladly pause for any questions or comments that anyone might have.
Thank you so much, Scott. That's always an incredibly thorough presentation, the information that we received before, the information that we received during. Are there any comments from the public or questions? Questions or comments from council? Go ahead, Commissioner Colavini.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was quite a robust report.
Sure.
Plenty of good late night reading.
Yep.
I also wanted to congratulate our finance team. Thank you for your hard work, and year after year you keep doing that. And also to Diva, the assistant finance director, Robin Leahy, the finance director, Mike Baker, the deputy village manager, and finally the village manager, Dave Fieldman. It's important that we run this village in an honorable way and in a financially sound way, and our staff has always put really close attention to that. And you know, they make the hard things look easy, but you know, not every village is so blessed with these kinds of results. And I think the other thing that's notable is the staff was able to do that through a pandemic and coming out of a pandemic. So, well done. Congratulations.
Any other comments from council? All right. Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you all again for your time and attention. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Scott, appreciate it. The next item on tonight's first reading agenda is an ordinance amending certain sections of Chapter 14 concerning motor vehicles and traffic. And here to present background information on this item is our Public Works Director, Andy Sikich.
Good evening, Mr. Sikich.
Good evening. It's the exciting portion of the meeting. So tonight I'll be presenting an ordinance amending certain sections of Chapter 14 of the Municipal Code concerning motor vehicles and traffic. Sorry, bear with me. There we go. The proposed ordinance revisions are composed of several items. The recommendations from the April 13th Transportation and Parking Commission, the codification of previous temporary manager approvals, and some administrative updates. The temporary village manager approvals include such items as the reduction in speed limit on Forest between Warren and Franklin, and the all-way stop at Norfolk and Saratoga. The administrative updates provide some consistency in format, alphabetizing, correcting Scrivener's errors, and reflecting current field conditions. These updates are a result of a recent review by our transportation manager, and they basically clean up any found discrepancies between the code and existing conditions. I'll quickly run through the TAP Commission recommendations. These are all pretty straightforward, and in all cases, TAP Commission agreed with staff's recommendations. First item on the list is the intersection of Summit and Blodgett. This intersection is a T intersection with a yield sign for eastbound traffic. Residents petitioned for a stop sign to replace the existing yield sign due to visibility concerns of the traffic traveling north-south on Blodgett. And the recommendation is that the yield sign be replaced with a stop sign for eastbound traffic on Summit. Next item is a weight restriction along Cross Street between Ogden and Burlington. A traffic calming petition was received requesting a limitation on prohibition of semi-trucks on Cross between Ogden and Burlington. This roadway was annexed by the village with an existing 6-ton weight limit in place due to the pavement and some geometric considerations, which do not allow for heavy trucks to operate in this corridor. There is a single sign noting the weight limit south of Ogden Avenue and no signage for northbound traffic, but this weight limit is currently not in the municipal code. So it's recommended that the 6-ton weight limit on Cross between Ogden and Burlington be added to this section of the municipal code. The next item is regarding traffic controls at the intersection of Rogers and Highland. Residents have requested this location be converted to an all-way stop. The intersection is currently a two-way stop only north-south on Highland, and there is confusion at the intersection regarding the interaction between pedestrians and vehicles. So the recommendation here is to change this to an all-way stop. The next item is the intersection of Victor and 4th. Staff received inquiries related to concerns of traffic and speed on Victor between 2nd and 55th, and a request for a new sidewalk on the east side of Victor Street. Victor is a 2-lane road with parking allowed on both sides. There is existing sidewalk on the west side of Victor at this location. The traffic volumes and speeds on Victor have not changed significantly since it was studied as part of Neighborhood Traffic Study number 3. So staff's recommendation here is for a marked crosswalk and warning signage to be installed on the south leg of the intersection across Victor Street. The next item concerns Fairmount Avenue at 68th Street and at Oxford. A traffic calming petition was received to study Fairmount Avenue and Oxford from 75th to Main, and you can see the corridor that we're talking about here. Oxford Street runs from Main to Fairmount, and then Fairmount continues past El Sierra School to Claremont Drive and then to 75th Street. For this request, staff reviewed the intersections of Fairmount Avenue at 68th and at Oxford Street. The intersection of Fairmount and 68th is currently a T intersection with only yield control for westbound traffic on 68th, and it's located adjacent to the El Sierra School. The intersection of Fairmount and Oxford is a T intersection with a stop sign for southbound Fairmount Avenue only. And staff recommends converting both of these intersections to four-way stops, or all-way stops, sorry. And finally, the last TAP item is the intersection of 72nd Street and Blackburn Avenue. Staff received resident inquiries regarding confusion of right-of-way and sight distance issues related to this intersection. 72nd and Blackburn is currently a T intersection which is uncontrolled without any signage denoting right-of-way. And it is recommended that this be converted to an all-way stop. And with that, I will open it up any questions you have.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. I'm going to go to the audience first. Any questions or comments on this item? Questions or comments from council? Yes,
Just one.
Commissioner.
Yes, thank you. For Cross Street, you mentioned the one sign, and we're amending the code or changing the code to align with what we're trying to achieve there. Anything else in addition to that, additional signs or any other indications to, alert or warn truck drivers that that's not a street to be using?
Yeah, we will add additional signage, and that one sign, as you can see, is pretty far back from
Yeah.
Ogden. So we're planning to move that up closer so that trucks don't actually make the turn before they see the sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Colvini?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I thought all these made perfect sense, particularly the ones with Summit being a block away from Whittier and Fairmont and 68th being near El Sierra. So it just shows our continuing commitment to try to keep things as safe as we can near our schools.
Any other comments? All right, thank you, Andy.
What a great segue from Commissioner Colvani about safety near schools, which brings us to our last item on tonight's first reading agenda. It's a motion authorizing staff to continue to pursue traffic safety improvements on Main Street in Highland near Downers Grove North High School. This is a multi-year effort, and Andy will continue presentation on this item.
Thank you, Dave. So Dave just introed that very well, so I'm going to move on to slide number 2. And I'm going to start with just a brief history of this project and how we got to where we're at today. Then I'm going to present a summary of the draft preliminary design report, which you will see and hear referred to as the PDR, as well as a summary of the public information meeting that occurred in May. And finally, staff is requesting council direction to continue with these improvements and submit the PDR to IDOT for approval. So these proposed improvements were initiated in the high school pedestrian safety study, which was a partnership between District 99 and the village back in 2019. It had a goal of improving pedestrian safety at both North and South high schools. Sam Schwartz consultants were hired to prepare the study, which included extensive public engagement, and the study was accepted by the Village Council in February of 2020. Out of that study came several recommendations. The ones we're discussing this evening relate to North High, along Main Street from Sherman to Franklin, and along Highland between Lincoln and Grant. The Main Street recommendations consisted of a reduction to one lane in each direction, which is often referred to as a road diet, protected left turn lanes, center refuge islands, curb extensions, enhanced lighting, and traffic signal phasing modifications. And the recommendation on Highland was to construct chicanes between Lincoln and Grant. So subsequent to the acceptance of that study in 2020, staff has been proceeding with several of the recommendations on various trajectories and timelines. With regard to these North High Main Street improvements, the Village Council approved a contract with our consultant, H.R. Green, in September of 2021, which was for the preparation of a Phase 1 engineering study, of which the PDR that I'll be talking about is part. In October of 2021, H.R. Green performed updated traffic counts and then prepared a traffic model and the draft PDR based on those counts. In addition, on the village's behalf, H.R. Green prepared a grant application for STP funding through DuPage Mayors and Managers. The project scored very well and is preliminarily on the approved funding list, which would provide up to $1.47 million of the estimated $2.1 million of construction cost. We should have the final decision on that in September. But at this point, it looks good, like that project will receive funding. So I'd like to first highlight some of the key findings of the preliminary design report. First, there's a high number of vehicle and pedestrian crashes along this stretch of Main Street. Over the past 5 years, there have been 99 crashes, including 8 that involve pedestrians or bicyclists and 1 fatality. The predominant crash types are rear end and sideswipe crashes, primarily attributed to left turns being made from the inside travel lanes. Another key finding is that the left-turning vehicles currently impede traffic flow. The lack of dedicated left turn lanes requires vehicles to stop in the inside travel lanes while waiting to turn, and this causes other vehicles to perform unsafe maneuvers like stopping abruptly, weaving from one lane to the other to avoid the stopped vehicles. And in addition, the southbound lanes currently merge from 2 lanes down to 1 at Franklin, and many drivers will wait to merge until the last possible moment in order to avoid left-turning cars, particularly at Prairie. And lastly, the preliminary design report found inefficient traffic signal programming due to the lack of dedicated left turn lanes. As I mentioned, the left turners sit in the inside through lanes while waiting to turn left, but the traffic signals don't know if these vehicles are turning left or going straight. So as a result, the Prairie signals are programmed to give northbound vehicles a left turn arrow in the morning, and southbound vehicles a left turn arrow in the evening, regardless of whether any vehicles are actually waiting to turn. So now I'll highlight the preliminary improvements that are going to be proposed. First is the change, obviously, from 1 through lane in each direction, with the addition of protected left turn lanes. And we are expecting this change will increase safety through smoother traffic flow, provide one clear merge location, and by separating left-turning vehicles from through vehicles. This should result in a reduction in driver confusion and delays. Overall, the travel times through the corridor will remain relatively unchanged, with the average time it takes to travel from Franklin to Sherman northbound increasing by only about 4 seconds, and southbound decreasing by about 12 seconds. This change in lane configurations allows us to add several other features which will improve efficiency and safety. The signals will be optimized to provide left turn arrow only when needed. Dedicated bike lanes will be added between Grant and Franklin to give bicyclists a connection between downtown and the high school. The reduction in lanes allows the bike lanes to be located within the existing road width without moving existing curbs or removing parkway trees. And curb extensions will be utilized at Grant Street to shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians at that intersection and provide a logical termination point for the bike lanes. In this slide here, you can see what the proposed road configuration would look like. There's 1 through lane in each direction with the center left turn lane, and the green painted bike lanes to the outside of each of the through lanes. This configuration allows for construction to be completed, as I said, within the existing pavement width, which reduces cost and impact to the neighborhood, such as no removal of parkway trees and things like that. In this slide, you can just see a blow-up of the proposed intersection at Main and Grant. The curbs on the west side here are bumped out in order to shorten the walking distance, and you can see the north end of the bike lanes terminate at this location. So also included in the recommendations for North High was the addition of chicanes on Highland between Lincoln and Grant. It is expected that these would result in a reduction of vehicle speeds on this block. And here you can see a preliminary design sketch of what the chicanes might look like. 2 sets of chicanes are proposed, which would result in the approximate loss of about 7 parking spaces on the east side of Highland. On May 23rd, a public information meeting was held. It was attended by approximately 15 members of the public. Comments were collected from attendees and generally included the diversion of traffic to surrounding streets, the merge location's proximity to Ogden Avenue, the utilization of bike lanes, lighting, the use of a temporary test case, and the improvements on Highland Avenue. With regard to the location of the merge from 2 lanes to 1 for southbound traffic, H.R. Green analyzed the data and the applicable standards, and they can locate the merge point south of Sherman Street. So as you see here, the 3-lane section would start south of the east leg of Sherman, with a transition occurring in the orange area there, and 2 through lanes in each direction would remain between Ogden and the west leg of Sherman Street. But it should be noted that no final design has been done, and it will be up to the review and approval of IDOT. As I mentioned above, part of the initial study recommendations including enhanced lighting along Main Street. Options for this could include enhanced LED beacon lighting at intersections, pedestrian and sidewalk lighting similar to Main Street in the downtown, or street lighting similar to Main Street south of Maple. So, tonight, staff is requesting council direction to continue to pursue traffic safety improvements on Main Street and Highland Avenue near North High School. If so directed, our consultant will finalize the preliminary design report and submit it to IDOT for approval. After it's approved, the village will enter into a contract with a consultant for final design of the project, and the estimated start of construction would be in 2024. And with that, we'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Andy. This is an incredibly complex topic, so my guess is there will be some discussion on this. Are there any questions or comments from the public on this issue? Go ahead, come up to the podium. Thank you.
Hi, Tom Schroeder, Forest Avenue. I never thought I'd be up here again, but just want to get some clarification here. There was some talk starting that it was going to start from Ogden, but then there's enough pushback, enough concern that there might be backup onto Ogden, so you guys pushed that merge lane down to Sherman. My question is on the further southern down. Can we push that up to Prairie? Because I'm concerned now if you get rid of 2 lanes coming down and getting rid of that right turn lane that we have in Franklin? Is that going to be impacted?
The right turn lane won't be removed.
It won't?
It'll stay there.
Okay, good. I was going to say, if not, that's going to really screw up a lot of stuff coming on the other side of the street. There was people concerned that, this is, Main Street by definition is our main street. It is a carrier street. You're going to discourage people, which I think is kind of the goal, to be on that street and go somewhere else. Roughly 6,000 cars go there a day. There was concern that it's going to push cars over to Washington and Highland, and obviously I'm selfishly concerned about the west side. And we've always moved in incremental steps. I still want to hold out for my single speed hump on Forest, but we're not going to talk about that tonight. But we did move very slowly through that whole process over a year. And I'm slightly concerned that we didn't want to spend that $5,000 that's affecting 22 houses on my street. And we're going to move forward with spending potentially $2.1 million, even though we're going to get $1.4 million grants to do this. And we're not going to move forward in an incremental potential test basis that is going to affect more than 22 houses on my little block. It's going to affect hundreds of houses on Main Street and 1 to 2 blocks east and west. I'm not an expert in traffic lights, but I do know that it's not a major deal to program these lights. We certainly can tweak them and program them how you guys want to do it, how the consultant is saying. You obviously cannot put curbs out, bringing them in on each side, I should say, because you have to have emergency vehicles. So I understand you're going to bring them in and have bike paths on each side. You certainly can put cones out there for a couple of weeks. You can tweak the lights, and you can do a very good potential simulation. Not exactly, but it's better than nothing. The fear is you spend, 2.1 minus the 1.4 million grant, and all of a sudden there is craziness. There are people freaking out with extra, thousands of cars on each side of Main Street. Main Street now becomes a minor street, and all of a sudden you can't turn time back. You can't get that money back. You can't, I guess you could scrape up the paint and get rid of the bike lanes and all that kind of stuff. I'm just suggesting maybe you might want to try to go to the consultant and say, hey, can we do a 2-month trial with the lights? Maybe do a 2-month trial with some cones. Temporary cones can be hammered in. It's not just like a cone sitting there where a car goes by and it blows over. You can actually put down pretty permanent cones down there and just try it out. I mean, if we're not doing construction costs until 2024, construction rather, it seems like there might be some time. And this is a very important topic to hundreds of people, which might be worth communicating that and taking a little slower approach. Have a good day.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments, questions?
David Rose. I've got a question about the inclusion of bike lanes in this program. It wasn't clear to me based on what was said or what was depicted, or maybe I just couldn't grasp either way, whether the bike lanes are how the bike lanes are going to be protected. I know there's been a lot of discussion in the city recently about people being injured because the bike lanes are not fully protected from traffic, and that car traffic will use a bike lane to make certain maneuvers. I don't know if that's going to be an issue in this case, but not unlike what Tom was suggesting, if that hasn't been introduced into the conversation, I would suggest that some attention be given to exploring just how protected bike lanes are going to be and what the mechanism for doing so might be.
Thank you for your comments, David. Anyone else? Questions or comments? All right, I'm going to kick it back to council. Questions or comments from council? Go ahead, Commissioner Colavani.
Can you explain who H.R. Green is and Sam Schwartz and why we contracted these folks?
Sure. Sam Schwartz and H.R. Green are both transportation consulting firms. Sam Schwartz was consulted to do the initial high school pedestrian safety study. H.R. Green was then contracted for this specific portion of it to do the preliminary design work.
Okay. Would it be of any benefit to either one of those firms to falsify any of the data or falsify any of the modeling results?
No.
So you have a pretty high confidence level in the data that's been supplied by them?
I do.
Okay. And also, in the study, it referred to 2050 counts. Can you explain that a little bit?
The way the transportation world looks at these projects, including IDOT and the Chicago Metropolitan Planning Association, they require you to look out ahead and project higher traffic volumes in the future and use that as a basis for your design to be kind of conservative with your design.
Okay. So we factored in growth and including new developments downtown and things like that.
That's how they do all this, yeah.
Got it. And, yeah, I think that's it for now. I may have some other comments.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Yes. Just echoing with Commissioner Colavani that, I remember the initial discussions with Sam Schwartz, and they really took a lot of the community comments and thoughtfulness to heart. And so I'm pretty confident in this plan. I think that is the right thing to do to ensure the pedestrian safety of our high schools. The concern here is much more, again, for the bike and pedestrian safety than it is for, vehicle speeds or some of those others. That obviously that plays into the concerns for pedestrians, but that's our main focus here, is to make this a more walkable and bikeable space for our high school students. And so based on the experts that we have engaged in this process, I feel very confident with what they have suggested moving forward, and I'm in favor of this and look forward to implementing it in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Gilmartin?
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of things. I think, the idea of using grant money to fund this project is encouraging. 70% of the project sounds like would be covered if my math is correct. The bike lanes is I think a critical piece to this. I do agree the protection of those bike lanes needs to be addressed in some way, shape, or form, but I think as a starting ground to connecting the high school and downtown the other way, I think is a great first step. However, I do share some concerns about the impact to the streets around, as has been expressed. And so I think from my perspective, I think it would be good to hear any more. I know in the report there was lots of talk about, the volume control. Did we, I don't know if I was around for this, but was Fairview at one time 4 lanes down to 3, or has it always been 2 in the middle lane? Does anybody know? I feel like that's relatively new.
We'll do some research on that.
Okay.
I remember that there were significant improvements to sections of Fairview in the late 90s.
Okay.
I'll go back and double check that. I'm pretty sure it was a widening at that time. So we'll double check.
Sounds like someone may know. Okay.
Yeah, it was. I grew up a block from Fairview, so it went from 2 lanes to 3, and Marge Earl is here, and she lives a block off of Fairview.
Sorry, it was 2 lanes
Yeah.
to 3,
It was
or
2 lanes
4
and then
lanes to 3?
No, it was 2 lanes, and then it expanded to have the
Got it.
the middle
Okay.
turn lane.
Yeah, I'm just curious if there's been any sort of application like this done in the village that we could take a look at to understand what the impact might be. The models and all that are great and certainly trustworthy based on what they are, but I just didn't know if there was any real-world application here in the village where we took 4 to 3 and saw what the impact was.
Not here in the village that I'm aware of.
Okay.
The other example at that Fairview and Ogden intersection, because you have 4 lanes north of Ogden, and then as you're traveling south, those 2 lanes merge into 1, and that's called zipper merge, which is a very efficient way, and that's been working very smoothly for years. And I believe that 55th and Fairview is a similar situation as you cross that intersection. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Yes, Commissioner?
Yeah, originally I've voiced concerns about this because I thought, well, boy, that's a major arterial street, and it's just insane to me that we would take 4 lanes down to 2 lanes, and where all those cars going to go, until I read the report. And when I saw the street diet, that also resonated with me, because I've been reading Strong Towns for years now, and they talk about that as being a wonderful example. And then the U.S. Department of Transportation has studies and case studies where they have actual proof of improvements that are made. And then it's, you know, it's just a certain amount of common sense. It's kind of like you've got that express lane that's not being interrupted. And so, and then it seems like with the 11,000 to 16,000 cars per day, that's right in the sweet spot of that. And the fact that, you know, people, when they see it at first, will probably try other streets. But one thing I knew about when I was driving regularly, and also back when I had to commute, is I took the fastest route. And if people are finding out, now they're not going to probably notice that it's 4 seconds, more or less, or 12 seconds going in the other direction, but they will know that things are moving around if they don't really have a reason to go over to the side street. So this is one case where we really do have to rely on the experts, particularly when you read a 350-page report and you see all the details and all of the charts. You know, these people do that for a living. We do have a pedestrian problem. This wouldn't have stopped that tragic fatality because of those circumstances, but we're reminded we have 2,100 children and young adults that we're responsible for at Downers Grove North. And, you know, it's the purview of this council to make sure we are doing things to make that a safer environment. And you guys have done a lot of work. I attended the session down at Downer South and was able to give the public input, so there have been lots of good opportunities on this. So, you know, I'm still keeping an open mind, but I guess the way I'm feeling after really digging into this this report and looking at the Federal Highway Administration reports, that I'll probably be voting for this. And I'm also pleased that we're not removing that turn lane unforced, to keep that S-turn there in southbound.
Thank you. Any other final comments?
I have one.
Yes, Commissioner Glover.
One question, given the fact that I believe this conversation was driven by safety at the high school, and I think that there was an occurrence in regards to the bike safety lanes downtown, where like a ComEd truck was parked in the bike lane, causing the biker to go into the road. Is there a way to limit Amazon trucks or vehicles stopping at houses from parking in those bike lanes, other than in?
I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay.
We'll look into that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's a good point. Okay, anyone else? Final thoughts? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and quickly share my thoughts as well. This has been an incredibly in-depth process, and we've been talking about it for years, put it on pause due to COVID, and now it's before us again. Just the two things that I'm just slightly concerned about, and I think I'm going to continue mulling over, is I do have some concerns about traffic that would typically be on Main moving to some of those residential streets. Maybe this is just because these are issues that we've been dealing with for the past year or so, where we've been talking about heavy traffic on residential streets. But that is something that is a concern of mine. I understand that, you know, our material that we were provided kind of spoke against that, but I guess maybe that's just my innate fear about our residential streets getting some heavy traffic. I'm also not entirely convinced on the chicanes being proposed on Highland from Grant to Lincoln. I believe, Andy, can you confirm it would take away those 7 parking spaces, correct?
About.
Okay, and I know we did receive some residential feedback saying that they would like those parking spaces kept. If you're a resident in that area and you would like to weigh in, please let us know, because we do try and take those comments into consideration as much as possible. I would hate for people on that road to lose, that's kind of a lot of parking spaces, in my opinion. So that's just the other part of this that I'm not entirely convinced on. But I've been around since the start of this, and it's always been very thorough, well thought out. A final comment, public comment, Tom happened to mention the test, doing a test run, and that was not recommended, correct, by staff to do a temporary test?
Yeah, we think this works as a complete system, and there's just so many parts to it that it doesn't set up well for a test in staff's opinion.
Okay, so if we were to say, well, we want a test, it would likely be incredibly inaccurate?
It doesn't set up well to simulate all of the components of a two-street system for that many blocks, just so many moving pieces, so.
Thank you. Final thoughts? Commissioner Colavini?
Yeah, I don't, if we're going to be studying timing of lights, I would like us to take a bite at the apple of the whole northbound on Forest to eastbound on Franklin, and making that northbound turn on Main Street in the reverse of that. I don't know if we can tie that in together, but I think it's a good recommendation. And I believe this is a time that we can take a more holistic approach. So I'd be in favor of that. Maybe I can get some head nods on that one. And I did notice, because I drive on Claremont several times a week, a car actually parked right on top of the speed hump. A little red compact car, fits really nicely on there, and didn't take up any parking spaces.
Thank you, Commissioner.
That's all I have to say.
Final comments. All right, thank you, Andy. And that ends our first reading tonight, moving us to the manager's report. And I'm kicking it again to Manager Dave Fieldman.
Just to wrap up that last item, so no need for head nods, because next week we will put on an actual motion, which will get the official direction from council on that previous item. So look for that next week. And on the manager's report is our continuing discussion of our own facilities project, and our deputy manager, Mike Baker, has been leading our team, so I'll hand it over to him with an update.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening. So this agenda item allows for presentation and discussion of the design development plan documents for the facility replacement and sustainability plan. We think these design development plans have captured the Village Council's direction that's been provided over many months and on a variety of aspects of this important project. Let me touch on a few of those. First, building design. If you recall back to November of last year, there were a number of objectives that the council agreed to, which we believe are really well represented by the plan. These include, and I'll just highlight a few of them, instantly recognizable as a government building, uses traditional materials including brick, stone, and glass, allows for environmentally sustainable features integrated into the design, and is welcoming, and that all people feel comfortable approaching and entering the building. And finally, just an example that this building and the project is a shining example of compliance with the downtown design guidelines. To elaborate a little bit more on that, and I'll go through some other images showing the building. As the zoning approval came through Plan Commission and then Council during the April and May timeframe, there was extensive review of how well the project did comply with those design guidelines, and included a full page identifying many criteria that were adhered to, including that the apparent mass and bulk of the facility is reduced by structural articulation, windows or other architectural and functional elements, and by landscaping. That the facade is visually appealing through articulation, detailing openings and materials of each elevation. I'll show another example here. And that the primary building entrances to the public street have been provided that are highly visible and inviting to visitors and employees. So just a few examples from that extensive list of compliance with downtown design guidelines. Another feature or aspect of the project that was certainly important and discussed over several meetings were the environmentally sustainable features and attributes of the building and the site. Those include stormwater enhancements intended to reduce runoff and stormwater pollution. I will mention all of those that I'm describing right now are in addition to the environmentally sustainable features that are required by current building codes. So a green roof installed on approximately 10% of roof areas, permeable pavers installed on 100% of parking surfaces, and bioswales and rain gardens, which include approximately 80% of the landscaped areas. Water use reduction, also an important feature, including efficient plumbing features, use of native plantings, and rainwater harvesting for irrigation systems. There's emphasis on increased energy performance, as well as the use of renewable energy, and this image kind of shows the extensive use of photovoltaic panels on the roof of the building. There is also a carport and secure parking lot that will include those panels as well. Briefly touching on the Blackburn Civil Rights Plaza, we believe this area offers a unique public space with attractive native plantings and landscaping, along with inviting informal meeting and gathering spaces. And while the landscaping plan has been prepared, the design team is still working on the unique placemaking elements that will further define this site, and the council can expect to see more details about these features in July. And as one kind of moves through the plaza and to the entrance of the Village Hall, they will make their way into the lobby and then into Betty Cheever Council Chambers. And this chamber design, based on council input, now reflects an enhanced level of formality with a fixed and raised dais. The next steps for this project include approval of the design development plans. Those will be on the June 21st agenda. In the meantime, Leopardo Construction, or the construction management firm, is preparing final cost estimates that will result in the guaranteed maximum price. This information will be presented at the July 5th council meeting, with council action scheduled for July 12th. Assuming approval, full project construction will begin on August 9th. I do have available, for the discussion purposes, all of the images that are included in the staff report, so if you want to refer to those by page number, I can pull any one of those up. And before concluding, I do also want to introduce and acknowledge some of the key people that are here in the room with me. They include David Yandel from FGM Architects, Nicole McElroy from Leopardo Companies, and I'd also like to acknowledge a number of the staff members that have been integral to the design work that has gotten us to where we are now. Certainly Stan Popovich. Stan Popovich and his team in community development, Andy Sikich, his team in public works, Enza Petrarca and Dawn Didier, the legal assistance that we've received, like Robin Leahy and her team as well, obviously the financial aspects of the plan and getting everything ready for the bond issue. So a lot of extensive work that has gone on into this, including staff members throughout the organization that have provided input early on and have helped guided the design of this facility. So happy to entertain any questions and comments that members of the council or community may have on this project.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to go to the community first. Are there any comments or questions on the design development plan that was just presented? Come on up to the podium. Good evening again.
David Rose. I remain disappointed council continues to misuse the term sustainability with respect to the certain attributes of the proposed new facility. I repeat, it's a lie. The term misleads residents, as we saw in the complimentary remarks made to council during public comment at last week's meeting. With all due respect to that individual, she appeared as someone with good intentions but little actual understanding and awareness. And we heard it again this evening in response to my comments about waste reduction. You missed my point that I don't hear and have yet to hear anything about what the actual goal of waste reduction is and how that translates to sustainability. Sustainability is not a feature of a product, including a building. That it's used in that way is, in the U.S. is more shared self-delusion. Neither council nor architects have presented any data demonstrating sustainability. Reduction is not sustainability. Reduction in one factor is simply that, reduction in one factor. Of course, given what council has demonstrated, what it is willing to call data, I have no idea if each of you somehow imagines you have the data you need to find persuasive that what you're doing is sustainable. I would strongly disagree with that. I will say again, making a building more environmentally friendly when it's financed and built by a larger way of living that's nowhere close to being environmentally sustainable is nothing more than conscience laundering. The council chair wants the facility to set a good example. What good is an example when council refuses to put in ordinances for construction throughout the village and refuses to examine environmental sustainability relative to the village as a whole? Are you relying on the idea that no one will sue you for lying as the reason for permitting continued use of this deceptive language? In the current facility, the distinction, changing topics here. In the current facility, distinction between gatherings in this chamber and in the so-called committee room exists. I apologize if I missed it, but I do not recall what replaces the committee room in the new facility, or is that distinction eliminated? What, if any, thought or adaptation has been made to allow for occasional overflow levels of attendance at a meeting in the new facility? I assume that absent fixed seating as in the current facility, should there be a need to distance from one another in the future at meetings in the new facility, chairs would be spaced accordingly. Is voting in elections expected to occur in the new facility? In what space? Not obvious to me is how the plaza will lend itself to multiple purposes, although from what was said this evening, perhaps that's still under consideration. Separate subject. As far as I can tell from discussion, the cell tower is being moved for one reason and one reason alone, because the plans for the TIF district entail selling a portion of the property, and that portion would lie within the current tower position safety drop zone. It's also worth mentioning, in light of last week's decision to purchase a property using stormwater fund money, that laws and regulations are hardly uniform when it comes to enforcing compensation of people who are hurt by the impact of decisions made by council, ostensibly in the name of the greater good of the village. The point applies not only to the cell tower, but to households like those affected in the Longfellow neighborhood, including cases like the one reported of an individual spending thousands to deal with stormwater individually. While the law may not require it, am I wrong to presume nothing prevents the village from instituting a practice that would in fact include such considerations as part of the financial impact of any decision involving so-called economic development that in which changes dramatically affect not just the property being sold, but those that are neighbors to it?
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, Marge Earl. Could you go back to the slide of the Betty Cheever council chambers? Thanks, Mike.
The interior?
Yeah, that interior. As I'm looking at that interior and I'm looking at this interior, I'm just going to say maybe you're missing a door on the opposite side. I won't go into why, but maybe when you think about it, or we'll talk about it offline, it just would make me nervous.
Thank you. Any other comments? Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Sarah DePaspel. Good to see you guys. Missed you last week. Just wanted to ask about the landscaping that was requested and where that's at with discussion of the group here. I know it was added as a note in the agenda or the manager's report.
Correct. I'm going to turn that over to staff for some more information.
Yes, there was information in the staff report. Staff has met with Sarah and a neighbor of hers to discuss the buffering. This is what was originally proposed by the landscape architect, showing fencing, replacement fencing, higher in elevation, and evergreens line that would grow to about 15 feet. One additional idea that was proposed was the installation of trees that could grow to a taller height and potentially on private property. Of course, details would have to be worked out, perhaps with requiring easements for that to occur. So if council were directed staff to continue looking at options and provided preferred outcomes that you'd like to see, we would certainly be happy to explore those.
Thank you.
And if I could add, I do of course, everybody knows, but just letting the public know, I check in with each of you on Monday before the meeting just to get any individual feedback. And I did hear from a majority of the council an interest in enhancing the landscaping in this area. So I'll be looking for head nods tonight and in the motion next week. We could actually, I see a lot of heads nodding, we could actually sketch up some ideas for next week's meeting, and I think that would be to the council's liking, so we'll take that as informal direction. We'll show a couple of things there.
I believe so, yes. Commissioner Colvini?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. Specifically, one of the challenges we have is the pretty significant incline in the lots, so it's difficult to be able to give the amount of shielding and how many years it would take to grow. But if I were king and you guys would be willing to grant us an easement, there are a lot of plants like arborvitae, white pine, Douglas fir that can grow pretty rapidly, look really nice, and depending on how on your lot you'd be willing to put them, it can create a really nice shield. I was involved in an email exchange today, and I sent some pictures of Compass Church had the same issue. They built a major expansion in 2005. The neighbors right behind them were concerned that they'd be looking at the back of a two-story building. It was a large building, so they did that. They put in a berm, planted arborvitae, Douglas firs. There were also some deciduous trees there. And now if you go on College and Hobson, you can see that this is, it would be hard to tell that there was a building there looking from the houses. And you guys already created a berm
on
for
some
us.
of the properties, yes.
Yeah. So I'd be in favor of that kind of approach.
We would certainly be open to the accessing our properties and then having both the arborvitae, the fence, and the additional pine.
Yeah. One of the challenges we have with our parking lot is we have to be able to turn really large fire engines around. So they use every bit of that space. So it's not like we could carve out 15 or 20 feet on our side of the fence and still be able to function the way we are functioning.
Understood. Okay. And then the note of the lights, that's still under review. We don't have the best vantage point from our house, and the other neighbors have been in and out and on vacation and stuff too, so we'll get that confirmed.
Please.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I think staff received direction from the council or enough head nods to look into that. Okay, great. Any other comments from the public? Comments or questions from council? Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that view from the train looks like markedly better. It looks fantastic. So thank you so much for working with us and continuing to update that over and over again. It looks great. I'm also really excited to see all of the native plants. I am thrilled that we are going that direction, and I'm I really enjoyed the renderings. They were really indicative of the species that we would see here, so it looks great. My only small comment, which I've mentioned before, but I also know this is one of the last times that we have a chance to bring up any details, is just, especially with the fact that I've just spent the last week and a half volunteering with EQDG on a lot of Pride events, just making sure that there are non-gendered bathrooms inside. That's incredibly important to be a welcoming space for everyone. It's a good way to show that folks are welcome. So that was just something that I wanted to bring up, having seen some of the interior of the building. And then finally, yes, with regard to the landscaping, I am definitely in favor of looking to see what we can do to try and provide as much of a buffer as we can. I don't know the specifics of turning around, so I'd be happy to talk offline a little bit more about that and if there is any space or not. But if easements are possible, then I'm all for seeing what we can do. So thanks.
We'll have some options with next week's motion, and I would like to build on what Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit was talking about the native plants, et cetera. Mayor Barnett is not really in a position to hold an in-depth discussion, so he asked that I mention his comment that he made to me on the phone earlier today, and that is, there's a little bit of turf grass shown in the proposed landscaping plan, and he wanted to propose the idea that we convert the landscape plan such that there's no turf grass on the site with an expansion of natural and native landscape materials.
I would be very in favor of that.
Do you need head nods on that, Manager Fieldman?
I think we can explore that with our landscape architect who's
Okay.
working for FGM on the project, so I think we can come up with a couple of ideas on that as well.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from council? Commissioner Colavini?
Yeah, I love this presentation. As I flipped through each slide, I got more and more excited. I didn't see anything I didn't like. It was really each one of these renderings, each elevation, the articulation is just fantastic. The plaza, the native plantings, the fact that we said yes to all the environmental things. We took out some things that were superfluous, so that allowed us to pay for it. And I'm going to refer to slide number 21. And when I saw this, I said, yes, this is the idea I articulated before, that if we have this kind of sign welcoming people to this space, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't use this design to welcome people to Downers Grove. And the idea that you're matching the architecture of the building, the look and feel, as soon as you enter the town. So, you guys scored a touchdown on that one. Maybe a grand slam home run if I can mix my sports metaphors.
I like your metaphors, Commissioner Colavini.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council?
Sure.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to just echo some of the same comments. I think these renderings have really brought to life what we have been looking for. I think I'm most impressed with the classic exterior combined with a very new and fresh interior design. So from my perspective, just nailed it. Agree with all the other comments about the plantings and, again, the exterior. One of the questions, though, that I had was some of the signage. So in the, sorry, I've been looking around. You can go back to the 29. Inside the chambers, we sort of have a text-based background there. I might be getting into the details here. I'm not sure if that's the intention to just have Village of Downers Grove in letters, or if the logo or something along those lines. I feel like that's a huge opportunity there to sort of dress that up a bit. And I sort of would ask the same questions on the exterior of the building. I know that probably is a little more classic with the words, and logos do change, so I want to be cognizant of that. But it felt a little, just given how fresh and cool the inside looks, it felt a little stale inside.
We're working very closely with the design team on the interiors, and more work will go forward as we get towards construction. So the idea here was, there's multiple users of this proposed Betty Cheevers council chambers, including School District 58, so there may be opportunities to have logos displayed on screens, et cetera, that are changeable, so we're looking into that idea. Also, regarding the use of logos on the exterior, the logos do show up, as Commissioner Colvani noted, on the monument signs. Also on the knee wall at the Northwest Plaza. We, as a staff, had reviewed some images of logos on the building, and for some reason, it just didn't click. And I think you hit it on the head tonight, Commissioner Gilmartin, that it just, I think, just not the right classic design there. But the logos do show up throughout the campus, if you will, on the other side. So we'll be looking for further council direction on that, maybe something to think about over the week before we have a motion next week on this.
Again, really nailed everything I think we've been looking for, and excited to see this moving forward. I do agree with the comment from the resident about the additional door, in terms of the safety opportunity there. So I would be interested in seeing what option would be there, and I appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment? Commissioner Glover?
Yeah, I'm also really excited about these renderings. I would like to express my also approval of the additional buffering. I also back up to Ogden Avenue, so I understand, looking at the back of commercial space or a 8-foot fence. So if an easement was something that was able to be granted by the residents, I would like to explore possibly planting those arborvitae or other trees on the other side of the fence. So I'd like to express my support for that. And then also on slide, I believe 12, I just wanted to call attention to, there might be some confusion as to people crossing the tracks at Washington, possibly wanting to turn left into that what may look like a drive area. So if there was any way to deter that from happening, I would like to consider that as well.
Yeah, we'll be taking a really close look at that. As you know, with the reconfiguration of Washington Street, as you're heading southbound from the north side of the tracks coming across to the south, it is intended to be just an S-curve to continue south. No ability to turn into the Civic Center property at that point. That driveway is for emergency exiting of police vehicles in lights and siren situations only. So we're taking a lot of steps to make sure we're not sending a signal that it is an entrance. So if you look at the way the planters are configured to try to minimize that lane. Also, there's no pavement marking on here at all. In that area, all the paver bricks are designed to be consistent and designed to make it look only like a pedestrian type plaza. This has been an area of focus for the engineers, landscape architects, and the architects. As we get towards construction drawings, we'll look and see if there's a need for any further signage or indicators to make sure nobody tries to drive into the facility at that location. So we will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, I certainly don't want to be repetitive. I just want to say how exciting this process has been, seeing the different iterations of this going forward. The back of the building, hooray, it looks amazing. Thank you so much. And just really great to see the pictures with like people, like real looking people instead of like the little stick people, and plants. I mean, it really truly brings this to life, and I'm so excited to continue with this project and watch it move forward. This has just been a really enjoyable experience, so thank you to you all. And thank you to staff.
Yeah, thank you to Mr. Baker leading our team wonderfully. I'll just pause before I announce that that is the end of the manager's report to make sure there's no other council comments. And that ends the manager's report.
Thank you, sir. We are moving on to the attorney's report. Is there an attorney's report?
There is. Pursuant to Section 2.5 of the Downers Grove Municipal Code, the following are presented for village council consideration. Only one, an ordinance amending certain sections within Chapter 14 of the Municipal Code concerning motor vehicles and traffic.
Thank you very much. We are on item 9 of our agenda, which is public comments. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on non-agenda items. Is there anyone that would like to comment tonight on items that are not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, I'm sorry. Sorry, David.
I know you're tired, but
It's quite all right. I just,
9 o'clock yet.
not a problem.
Polling verifies we live in a time when Americans don't trust government. Indeed, as I alluded to in my comments last week, those who hold a neoconservative zero-sum worldview basically don't trust anyone who does not share their view. Thanks to their hard work, theirs has become the dominant motif of American life over the past 40 years, not just about government, but about everything. The foundational attitude of distrust now yields rising animosity because, as I also indicated previously, the economic pie is shrinking. Central issue in the current political atmosphere is what to do about violence. Conservatives are more than willing to talk about the obvious forms of physical violence that make the if it leads news stories in our media. But that violence is often as not the response to less obvious forms of violence that are a normal operating feature of our capitalist system. Specifically, under capitalism, people are valued to the extent they contribute to making profit for the capitalist, which means stability under capitalism works in one of two ways, either through acceptable sharing of the social product or through suppression maintained by force. Those on the left point out much of the discussion defending guns in the U.S. is grounded in racism. Racism derives from the need for the stability of American capitalism to have a readily identifiable set of people serving as the political economic safety valve, the group who pay the biggest price when capitalism goes through one of its inevitable downturns. Why can the U.S. not keep AR-15 assault rifles out of the hands of private citizens? Not because they want to shoot prairie dogs for fun or need them to resist government, take over their lives. No, it's because mainly white conservatives fear mobs of black people are going to rise up and take revenge. And to the extent conservatives recognize capitalism is indeed failing, and they refuse to give up their material standard of living to help mitigate the impact, they believe the likelihood of mob behavior is rising, and that in many areas police will not be there to protect them. Given that fear, white conservatives are willing to accept day-to-day mayhem with guns is inevitable, and keeping our children safe by turning schools into mini prisons. Violence may also be sparked by the upcoming Supreme Court decision on abortion, congressional decisions on regulating gun ownership, and by the outcome of our upcoming elections. Polling indicates, for example, that millions of Americans believe the current president holds office and Democrats hold majorities at the federal level thanks to rigged elections. More ominously, they're willing to use violence to prevent a similar result in the future, including keeping certain kinds of people from voting. Also not helping matters, as I suggested in my remark earlier, the reality of our not living environmentally sustainably is yielding a precipitous drop in both the affordability of the items we need to live day to day, and at least for the upper portions of society, the price of those assets they view as wealth. Now, the latter set of people may not resort to gun violence to keep what they have, but they're likely to resort to the legal avenues of violence available to them through the marketplace, selling inferior goods and services, squeezing wages and benefits, despoiling the environment, cheating on taxes, getting government subsidies, and so on. Which prompts me to say I second Marshall Smith's comments from last week, particularly his concerns regarding council's less than transparent handling of the purchase of property in a floodplain. As he suggested, many aspects of the arrangement call into question whether the rest of us footing the bill are well served by the decision. Beyond his point about the dubious notion of a market price for a house in a floodplain, I would note the larger issues affecting us all. The appropriate market price for houses purchased when interest rates were manipulated to be extraordinarily low, or when gas prices at the pump were allowed to remain questionably low. Both subsidies are now coming undone. Basic fact, the purchase price of private residential housing reflects nothing more than the owner's place in the hierarchy of exploitation that is the essence of capitalism. One might say, so what? If we lived on an infinite earth, that indifference might be acceptable, but we don't. And clever as we are as species, we cannot escape the limits imposed on us as material beings living in a material world. Our way of living is not environmentally sustainable, which means we must do more than imagine our task is to protect the environment. Our task is nothing less than changing the way our society operates. which is to say we will learn to trust again by figuring out how to get rid of exploitation in our social relations. Let's hope Downers Grove will break pattern and not be its usual 10 to 20 years behind the leaders of that effort.
Thank you. Any other comments on items that are not on tonight's agenda? All right. We are moving to item 10, which is the mayor's report. This evening, we do not have any mayor's reports. So we are going right to item 11, which are council member reports. This is an opportunity for council members to report on any goings-on in the community or any other group that they are affiliated with. So I am going to start to my left tonight with Commissioner Glover.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. No report.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilmartin.
Yes, just a couple things. As school has been out now for a week or so, just want to ask and remind our residents to be careful of cycling and running kids. Today's heat probably kept some of them inside, but there's lots of kids running around, and please just be careful. Look twice as they traverse our sidewalks. Also, a reminder that early voting has started here in Village Hall and other locations throughout DuPage County, so I encourage you to vote.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Colavani.
Yes, I'm acting on behalf of Commissioner Wallace. The Downers Grove Rotary Club is still in need of volunteers for Rotary Growth Fest, particularly on Sunday night. However, there are still spots available for the entire weekend. This fest is put on entirely by volunteers, so please consider helping out. All the proceeds from the fest go to local nonprofits. You can register at rotarygrovfest.com/volunteer, and I have no weather report for you.
That's coming next week. Thank you, Commissioner Colavani. Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit.
Yes, as a volunteer with EQGG and Youth Outlook, I just want to thank everyone for attending this month's Pride events. There was a wonderful Pride in the parking lot this last Sunday at the First United Methodist Church from 12 to 5. It was very well attended and the weather turned out great. So I just want to thank everyone for their support and attendance. And also wish everyone a reflective Juneteenth, and to please make sure you visit the Downers Grove Public Library, as they have been giving away book bundles about it for various age groups, and have some beautiful art and fabric displays from a local designer, Vera, and just really try and engage with the culture on this Juneteenth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Commissioner Colavani for reading my report. I had a statement that I would like to read, and I just felt that it would be more appropriate, not followed by anything else. So thank you to Commissioner Colavani. On behalf of the Downers Grove Village Council, I would like to extend our deepest condolences to Congressman Sean Casten and the entire Casten family on the loss of their daughter, Gwen. When a tragedy like this happens, we are simply all neighbors who support one another. This has been weighing heavy on my mind since yesterday, as I'm sure it has for my colleagues. All of us up here, and even those of us who are not here, are all parents. Like the Casten family, I also have 2 daughters, and I feel like there are no words that would heal my broken heart in these moments. And so, as they navigate this unimaginable situation, please send a prayer or healing energy their way. Downers Grove supports you and mourns with you, Casten family. And that is my report for this evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Stay well and good night.